5:30. Welcome everybody to this meeting. Are we live?
Yes, we're all set.
Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District Policy Subcommittee. It's 5:30. I'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Steve, would you lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first order of business is reorganization, so I will open the floor for nominations for chair.
I'm ready, Mike.
Okay.
There's one. They look me to that.
All right. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I will close nominations and then this will be a vote for chair. A yes vote is a vote for Dr. Tirabassi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Congratulations. It's
If
your
you're
meeting.
nominated, I will serve.
All right. First up on the agenda is policy IKFE, which is this is one of the ones that's very significantly changed, right?
Correct. Technically, it's a new policy for us. Last year, after the success of question 2, we developed a policy to define what the competency determination for our district would be. Remember, for students to graduate and get a diploma, they need 2 components. The first is the competency determination. The second is to satisfy local graduation requirements. The competency determination was previously satisfied by passing MCAS, but question 2 eliminated that as a possibility. So we developed something last year to allow us to make competency determinations for students. But over the summer, the Department of Education promulgated new regulations regarding competency determination and gave us some policy guidance on how to comply with the new regulations. That's this document, which is also in your packet. And I met earlier this week or last week with high school staff to develop a policy for us that aligns. So the key things about this are the table that's on page 3 of the handout. This basically says what students need in order to meet the competency determination. So it's 2 years of high school English. It's 1 year of both Algebra 1 and Geometry, or the equivalent of 1 year of integrated math 1 and integrated math 2 math, that we do that here. It's science, the equivalent of 1 year of any of the following disciplines: biology, physics, chemistry, or technology engineering. And then U.S. history, the equivalent of 1 year of United States history. Then what we had to do was align the courses that would satisfy these requirements. So the rest of this is kind of like a menu of options. So, and the biggest part is English, because English has more courses than any. What we're saying in this policy is that if students complete any 2 of the English courses listed on this, then they will have met the English Language Arts competency determination component. And then it continues with math, science, and U.S. history in the same manner. So it's basically listing all of the courses that we offer or could offer that could count towards the competency requirements that are described in the table on page 3.
I went through this. I appreciate the hard work that must have gone into this. Especially going through the whole course catalog and stuff. So the only question I have from this, and I think you've already answered it, is so our high school educators are behind this and they feel that this is meeting what we should be doing?
Yes, we met with the department chairs to go through this list of courses. And basically what we did was we started with a state list of courses, because every course we have in our catalog also is recorded with the state. And we went through course by course and said, do we want this one on the table or do we not want this one on the table? There was no controversy about that, so I think we have good support for this.
What's the curriculum and the integrated math courses? And does it include consumer math?
So integrated math is not offered here. We follow what's known as the traditional, I guess it's interesting. In the US perspective, it would be the traditional sequence of Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. However, in the world, it's more common to teach all the maths together. So integrated math doesn't split up algebra from geometry and the other statistics, the other disciplines. It just teaches it all together. So that is what that course is. Now you asked specifically about finance.
Consumer math,
No.
reading the unit prices, banking,
Yeah.
keeping a checkbook, kind of life skill math
Yeah.
that kind of gets left behind a lot.
Yeah, and my understanding, we have a math teacher here, so I should let him speak, but my understanding that stuff is usually a separate course.
We have a business personal finance class for math. And that is very popular senior level class. They do activities such as, do you want to lease a car or buy a car? And what are the outcomes? Let's follow the path of your payments to see how much you'll actually pay. They do mortgages, how to do a mortgage. They do checkbook. They do all that stuff.
That covers it. I just think it's important for that to be offered to the kids.
Absolutely.
And just to sort of play that out, to kind of understand how this policy works, the competency determination courses need to cover the same content that was formally tested on MCAS. So that course doesn't count towards competency determination because you didn't have questions like that on the MCAS. However, it does count towards our graduation requirement. So once students did their 2 math courses from this menu, that would be one of the courses they could take for the remaining 2 more they need in order to graduate.
I asked this before, it saddens me that this country has no national test that says this is what a high school diploma means. And I believe Monday there's a lot of schools over in the Middle East and then Asia, and every country I can find, at the end of high school, you take a national test, and maybe 85% of the kids pass. They get the high school diploma. The other kids went to high school, get another kind of diploma, might go into all kinds of trades and things. But what does a diploma really tell us, and especially as even somebody that hires people, what does it tell us people know about math and reading? Like what level math do they have? What level reading do they have? And does it really mean anything? And that's sad that MCAS was at least a step in the right direction, because I know when I taught, kids graduated that hardly ever showed up because they wanted to get rid of them. That was back from Long Meadow High School in the day. And there were so many different standards, even between different teachers, of what passed and what didn't pass, and to move kids along. And there were kids that got out of there that clearly, barely were functioning at a 9th grade level or 8th grade level. Mm-hmm. And then, so what does it tell you? They had a diploma from high school. Does it tell me anything? So tell you, but the MCAS at least meant you had to answer something that was at least statewide. Mm-hmm. So the question I'm asking really is, I read all these things. First, does every kid, and I saw this alternatives, does every kid that gets a diploma from Minichog have to meet a minimum core knowledge? Or is it that different kids, depending upon their level, have a different way to get to meet those requirements and to meet those competencies? Which means that when they come out, even though they both have the same diploma, it doesn't necessarily mean they have the same skills in terms of math and reading and things like that. So that's, I'm for having something that at least says something. Give all kinds of diplomas you want, give all kinds of things you want, but something that really says, here is the minimum requirement. Read it at 11th grade level, do math at 11th grade level, whatever it means to get out, to graduate high school. So as far as I can see, we're the only country, we're looking all over, that doesn't have that national test. And even, I think somebody brought up Norway, or they're that country, they don't believe in standardized tests, but they still have a national test at the end. It's the only one they got to see if you get the diploma or not. There's no test, there's no aptitude test until you get out, and then it says you learned enough. India, they study forever to pass that test. And then they can take it like multiple times, and they're all sitting there studying their butts off, and about 85% pass, and 15% just don't pass, no matter how hard they try. That's my questions. I just think, on the record, I wish we did have something that really said, I got a diploma from the United States of America, this is what it means, I know. And whatever it is, so, not that we can solve that here. So I'm asking, do all kids that get out of here, does it mean the same thing? Because I saw there was like ORs, like you can get a portfolio, or you can pass a test, or you can pass, you have to have a minimum knowledge, you know, to get your diploma here.
So, the reason that there are all these different options for students, let me back up. First of all, the courses that we identified were courses that were sort of already pre-certified by the Department of Education as covering the same topics that were covered by MCAS. So there's that attempt to standardize. The reason that there are so many options gets to really the additional considerations. We talk about late enrolling students. So if a student comes here in 10th grade from Connecticut, let's say, they still need to make the competency determination. So they need to do 2 of these courses as part of their graduation. And the high school principal needs to have some options to look through what they've done in another state and say, is that comparable to one of these courses? Or do we want to pick other courses that would be more appropriate for sophomores, juniors, and seniors as the way that they're going to meet their competency determination? So that's in part an answer. I don't know if that really answers it. But the other thing I want to say is, and students will still be taking MCAS. 10th grade, you know, the graduation requirement, it doesn't, is no longer attached, but they still have to take MCAS. And one of the things that we put in the appeal process, because we had to make an appeal process, is if for whatever reason a student doesn't pass these courses, but they pass MCAS, they can bring that to the principal for an appeal and say, look, I was able to demonstrate on this test that I have the competencies. Will you consider that as a component of making a competency determination on my behalf?
What about, it's almost like New York Regents, you get past one or the other to get the credit.
Right.
And some kid can not go to school past the Regents, etc. But what, the question I had though, is it possible, let's just say kids are here for all 4 years, is it possible that some kids graduate with different criteria than others graduate? In other words, what's
Yes.
the minimum that you need to get out? What's the minimum reading and the minimum writing in terms of just raw knowledge? Can you take a percent? You know, can you do whatever it is, you know, in your head, there's got to be a minimum factual knowledge of a skill that you have.
Right, so that's listed in the graduation requirements. Steve, can you say what the graduation requirements are?
So it's 4 English, 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 3 years of lab science, 4 classes in physical education, and 3 years of social studies, which must include US 1, US 2, and civics.
And how many blocks is that of their?
What I just described is it's somewhere around 17, 18, and they'll take 32. So it provides a lot of flexibility and options for them to pursue things that they're interested in, hands-on curriculum, you know, our wood shop, our CAD lab, all those things.
So everyone has to do the 18, and everyone has to do more than the 18, but what they do after that 18 is choose your own adventure to a certain extent.
Yeah, but taking the courses and doing the credits doesn't mean you could pass a test on a certain level of learning. You know, it's because there might be easier courses that don't even test at the end, or don't even say you have to pass this test to graduate to pass this course. Maybe you just show up and you pass the course. So do they have a minimum knowledge of certain areas of math? Math is math. It's not like, you know, either you can do something or you can't do something. Should you have a minimum knowledge of it?
They're not taking a standardized test.
Right.
But they have to pass the tests in the courses. You ask what the Minichog diploma means. I mean, my daughter just started at University of Vermont, and she was just home for the weekend, and feedback she gave me was that she felt that she's better prepared for what she's doing in college than most of her average peers that she's met there.
There's no doubt about that. I'm saying
So I think that our students are well above average, particularly for the state, even in the state of Massachusetts, which is which is really saying something.
No, I'm all, Fred, I totally agree with that, but I'm saying, can kids squeak through without having that knowledge at the lower end and still have a diploma? And that's really what we're saying, you know, because is there no test? And I did read.
They'll fail the course if they keep, if
Not
they don't pass,
necessarily.
if they don't pass math, do they get credit for taking it?
No, but there are ways to pass a course without being able to add two and two. In other words, like,
Well,
you
no,
gotta pass the test.
if you look at the rubric, I mean, you know, you have to, it depends on the course, but, you know, certain percent of your grade is turning in the homework, certain percent of your grade is performance on the test. So, you know, if you don't do the homeworks and you don't perform on the test, you will not pass the course.
That's
I think-
debatable.
I do hear what you're saying. To answer your question, there's no minimum standardized test of a minimum knowledge percentile that you're looking for. But there are things that we can look to that help with that situation. So competency being different than graduation requirements. In all of the competency outcomes that Dr. Provost has laid out, all of those courses have final exams. Those final exams are uniform throughout, so if we were all teaching Algebra 1, we're all given the same final. That's one kind of check. It's all checks and balances. That's one check. The work that they do together to grade common assessments, where they might get together and say, hey, let's check out our Chapter 4 test. Your kids did really well on balancing equations. My kids didn't. What did you do differently? You know, so that kind of is another check. The third check is the MCAS, right? If we're looking at the accountability report that Dr. Provost is going to deliver soon and seeing that we're scoring 30–40% below the state, and yet our GPAs are all 3.7s, then there's a discrepancy there, right? That goes back to your point of they're passing the classes, but we don't know what they really know. So the short answer is we don't have that. We don't have what you're looking for. But I do think we have a good system of checks and balances to ensure there isn't that large discrepancy that you're afraid of.
If there is, I did read when this question lost the ballot that individual school committees could institute some kind of test, you know, that minimum competency in different areas as part of the graduation requirements for this district. It's a shame that's not national, so I just wanted to throw that out there. Even if you said, here's a test that everybody took that showed you can do math at 11th grade level, 10th grade level. If you don't take that, you can't graduate regardless of what you do with the courses. So, you know, that's actually reflecting the teacher. If they do fail it, then you pass the kid, but he can't take this basic test.
It is possible to have knowledge and not perform on a multiple choice exam. And I think that that's one of the things that was behind removing the MCAS from the graduation requirements. At least that's one of the reasons that I voted in favor of getting rid of it from the graduation requirements. So, but if you want to bring it up for discussion for the whole school committee,
I don't have a minority opinion here. I'm just saying, I'm looking at national type
but
thing.
there's only 3 members of the committee
Yeah.
here, and we haven't heard from you, you know, and you know, if you want to bring it up for discussion, I really encourage you to email Michelle and Aaron and John, and they can make sure it gets on a future agenda for the committee to have a discussion as to if they want to compel the school district to do that.
Or you could even bring it up in the
And
discussion.
I will remain open-minded to the discussion, but it's difficult for me to imagine that personally I would be in support of it, but I'm only one person. You know, the only body that makes a decision is the entire committee, so no individual member matter. Well, I guess we matter, but not really matter, not by ourselves, only as a team.
But basically, in the rest of the world, if you get a high school diploma, you know how to take a multiple choice test, you know, something like that. And when you hire somebody, you expect somebody to at least be able to, on reasonable questions, be able to do basic math, be able to take a test and be able to think on your feet, because that's what a lot of jobs have. Otherwise, maybe you have a different kind of job where it doesn't involve that.
I'm not saying that a student can't pass the test. Like a math test where you show all your work and you write things out and you figure stuff out is different than entering in, coloring in the correct circle on a multiple choice exam. a skill that I am, by the way, horrible at, so perhaps I have personal empathy. That, one might imagine that I have at least a small degree of knowledge getting to where I got to, but I am horrible at multiple choice tests, and it was the bane of my existence.
I mean, it's been my experience, I hear exactly what you're saying, and you know what, you're right. It's been my experience that there are kids who don't mature until maybe their junior or senior year. So their record on those courses, they may pass the courses with D's and with C's, and they're not have the knowledge that you want them to have. But I've seen some of those same kids have something snap with them, and they're accountants, and they're lawyers, and they're, they mature later on. Denying a diploma to somebody denies access to a lot of things. Even if the diploma doesn't mean anything, if you've got it, you can go into service. I mean, my brother was probably the smartest one in my family. Squeaked by in high school by the skin of his teeth, but he didn't have an interest in it. When he got back from the Navy, he just took off. So I just, the reason I voted against it is I don't want to see a kid, any student, be denied a diploma because of a test.
Oh, it's not A, C.
Well,
It's under 4 years.
MCAS was a test. That was the only denying fact. That was the only thing that absolutely denied diplomas.
I think only 7 kids here, right? You said, or 6 or 7 kids. And they got to take them multiple times, they got to go back. That'd be pretty tough to not pass that. But the other thing is, on the terms of the tests, I was gonna say I forgot I was gonna say that, but going back to this, my father did tell a funny story. He was at MIT. He said that to get to the service in World War II, you had to take a 50-question true-false test, and his buddy of his got all 50 questions wrong. They immediately abducted him. So anyway,
There are always those urban myths. Yeah, it was the
not as smart as he thought he was.
urban myth of the kid who took the SATs and got every single question wrong.
That was a true one back then. So,
Well, back in the day, I never would have made it to college. I mean, I was heavy into the maths and sciences, but and since I had nieces and nephews who they discovered was dyslexic, I didn't even learn how to read till I got to high school. So all of those other courses, thank God for the athletic department, because when we were supposed to be taking gym, they put us all in a classroom. They said, "You guys are doing your studying." So I had collaborative learning back then, because I'd help kids with math, and I also could illustrate things for them, and they would tell me what the books we were reading was all about, and so I made it through, but.
it's also motivating. The book, The Other Westmore, which I think I brought up once before, the governor of Maryland currently, he writes about, that he was going through school and just being pushed along, he wasn't doing the work, and he was lazy, they just wanted to keep moving on. And at the end, he finally met somebody that helped mentor him. He said, I don't want to have separate standards for me. I want to be treated as tough as these kids that are in the AP courses. You should ask a lot from me. You should make me do all this. Don't just let me get by with doing nothing. And so he was really saying the motivation is to don't give special concern to people that are just, let's keep passing them, moving off. Set the standards higher, make them work harder, help them, to achieve that, tutor them, get them there. But don't make the standards easier. He was very adamant about that in his book.
But I think when we look at our results, this community's results on MCAS and this community's results on kids who move on to higher education, when we did that walkthrough at the beginning of last year, I was amazed at the fact that the kids you are dealing with, if they made it into college, they actually did better than the average kid. So there's some real resilience being taught to these kids and some hope. So I don't have the same concern that you have. I think the teachers are doing a great job here, and if you look at all the standards, they say that. I mean, Massachusetts is #1 on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and Wilbraham is right up there in the top 20%, 10%, I don't know exactly what it is, but Overall, we're doing a good job.
I'll tell you, I'm looking at in the national, global figure, one of the reasons there's more and more people recruiting for the Army is that they lowered the standards. You know, they're bringing people in now that see, what's a commission, they have no idea. They have no idea basic math, they're starting to teach them that stuff. This is pre-military induction because they have to get more people to join and they were failing. So they might be physically fit, but can they operate drones? Can they operate a tank? Can they figure out on a map where Fallujah is or whatever if they're out there? In other words, skills that they're taking in, people that just don't have that ability or knowledge. And the question is, should somebody that gets out of high school have the minimum knowledge to even join the military? You gotta be at least something smart on your feet. And the other people fighting on the other side, they're smart people. I mean, they have to pass those tests. They have to get in. They're not just, you know, taking people that can't add 2 and 2 and putting them into the military and giving them remedial learning. It's not just, I think we do a great job in the school. I'm not criticizing anybody here. I'm thinking globally, you know, what a diploma should mean and how we compete on the world stage as being the only one that doesn't do that, you know, per se. And make sure your kids have that knowledge. And then, you know, there's so many things people can do if they don't have a high school diploma or they have some kind of certificate of attendance. So that's just in terms of thinking globally, thinking outside this community. I think you guys do a great job. But I'm just looking at reading about what they even had to do for our own military. Lower the standards, that's how they're getting more people to recruit. Things that they would never take in past years, people they would never take.
So to draw our attention back to our policy on competency determination. And I'm concerned about the military bit for reasons, but how do you guys feel about, and this isn't graduation requirements, that one's next. But this is competency determination. You guys feel like that either of you are in a position to make a motion for this to be approved, or?
I would like to have a discussion on a minimal competency, like a minimal, you'd say, I think everybody out of here should have at least a 10th grade knowledge of math, you know, something small, that there'd be some sort of thing would assure that people could pass that.
They do have that outlined in the tables, very specific levels of coursework that need to be considered mastery. Like for instance, you know, so like to read the coursework requirements under the mathematics for competency, equivalent of 1 year of both Algebra 1 and Geometry courses, or the equivalent of 1 year of both Integrated Math 1 and Integrated Math 2, in case they went to that. Whether to follow Algebra Geometry or Integrated Math 1-2 courses sequence is determined by the district, but the equivalent length of the courses must still be met.
It doesn't tell me they can add 2 and 2, given that.
Well, I mean, if they're competent in Algebra 1 and Geometry, they can do a lot more than add 2 and 2. They can calculate the area of a polygon, they can do a number of things.
Basic stuff?
They've taken and passed multiple tests in the course.
Yeah, that's still, we don't have any standard, as Principal Hill said, we don't have any standard thing that says these are the questions that must be passed in order to get out of this course, in order to get out to graduate. There's other ways to pass courses without
But
passing
Steve
every
said
test.
that the final exams are standardized across the subjects, irrelevant of the teacher.
Are there other ways to pass the test without passing the final exam? Does everybody that fails the final exam fail the course?
No,
No.
it's, the final and midterm, if it has a midterm, has a cap of 20% of the final grade of the course.
Right, so you can get grades for showing up and stuff and still fail the midterm and final and still pass the course, even though you can't answer those questions.
Okay, so you'd like to have it, you'd like us to shelve this and bump up to the full school committee a discussion on implementing our own standardized testing for establishing definition of competency?
Yes, I mean, that's generally
Okay.
what I feel, you know, that, you know, minimum amount that somebody says, you know, it's on principle that a kid can answer this. They can't take a course and get all kinds of stuff for attendance and extra credit. They gotta be able to actually answer some key questions at the end of the course, you know, at the end of the unit, so.
Can I say, so this has to go to the full committee anyways. I think the question, one way to handle it would be to make a motion here to add a local graduation test to be devised, I guess, by the high school teachers. That would, you talked a lot about math, right? That would be
Well, I'm not sure the members here would be in favor of that,
right,
but Rich, might I don't wanna deprive him of the opportunity of having support from other members of the committee.
Right. What I'm saying is he could make the motion here, and if it fails, he could still make the motion at the full committee. But if it doesn't come out of this
Yeah.
committee, then the full committee can't discuss it.
Okay, so do we start off with a motion to approve or a motion to amend?
I think it's up to Mr.
So I think I'd
Riley.
like to have a motion that we put some basic kind of test or competency test that everybody must pass, even though it's just Hampton Wilbraham, not national, not Massachusetts, to graduate, you know, to pass the course or to graduate the high school. And I'm not saying something hard, something that most kids, without even studying for it, should be able to get it right, you know. And at least it shows that somebody has a minimal ability in math and
Do
reading.
you want to include in your motion who would be an individual considered appropriate to deem what the appropriate questions in the test would be?
I put it at the high school, you know, the high school staff, teachers, you know, what would be, there's gotta be lots of stuff out there that you can find. That's, and you can sit there and say, this is a test for 10th grade math, 11th, and I'm fine if somebody says, what does a diploma mean here? Well, it means you have a 10th grade math, or an 11th grade math, or 12th, whatever those standardized tests are that you can find out there, there's a lot of them around, you know, what you feel is appropriate. But at least it means something. In other words, at least it means if you're gonna sit there and say, you must have at least the knowledge of nationally what's considered 11th grade math or 10th grade math, you gotta answer these questions. If you can't, keep studying and working at it, and finally, at least your diploma says you've got a minimal amount of knowledge in math. I hire people that, I mean, I'm not saying this, because a girl, maybe she went here, not at Rice's Fruit Farm, and was getting a bunch of bananas, and she was taking the bananas off, weighing them one at a time on the scale. This is just recently. And I said, no, you don't have to weigh them one at a time on the scale. And she said, they'll all be the same price if you put all the bananas on at once. And she was clueless. So I'm not saying this is, I would think that would be on our test, you know, something like that, in terms of basic competency.
It's a community property.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sitting there waiting, and she's waiting each of my bananas one at a time, ripping them off of the thing.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second for a motion to amend?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion to amend?
I'm not necessarily comfortable with what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth discussing.
But I'm willing to have a discussion. But my major concern is, there's a hell of a lot of work that got involved in doing this. And teachers have an awful lot on their plate. And after doing this work, we're gonna go back to them again and wanna, you know, we have to give them time to do something like this. I don't wanna throw this kind of work on a staff that just produced this.
I think you could find out there in the marketplace somebody that says 10th grade knowledge of math, this is a test. So we're saying is keep all this that's here, say you must pass a 10th grade test or 11th, whatever you guys decide. I'm not sitting there saying which one way or
I
the
am
other.
completely comfortable with the existing midterms, finals, and assessments that the teachers are implementing. So I am against this amendment.
Even if you could fail the midterm and final and still pass the course.
It would be very difficult to fail the midterm and final and still pass the course.
20%.
But you'd have to have very good scores in participation and in homework. And then once again, it comes back to the fact that, well, gee whiz, if they aced all the homeworks and every time they're talking to the teacher in class, they're an A student and they can't sit down and go through the motions on a black and white paper test. For whatever reason, stress, anxiety, unable to focus on the words, ADHD, you know, should they be a failure? Because, you know, they have the knowledge, but they're just not able to perform in a certain, you know, specified, regimented way.
If you go home and do homework now, especially with AI and computers, who says you're learning it? The one place where you know you're learning it is if you're taking that midterm and final. So yeah, I'm sitting there saying, especially nowadays more than ever, that to have somebody actually take a test where you don't have use of computers or anything else, sitting in a room, shows you have some knowledge. Otherwise, who knows? You're testing how they can use a computer, how they can ask for an answer. Who knows? I mean, I see people coming to my company that don't know the basics, can't even, I sit them at a computer, they wrote me a nice cover letter, I said, now write this letter right now, and they can't, without using help. So, you gotta sit there and, I'm talking basic skills for even basic jobs, which involves communication. Involves where things are, we have customers and call from a place like, wherever, Egypt, well, where's Egypt? No, it's not in South America, what time zone is it? Maybe they have a different work week. These are things that people should have knowledge of when they come to work.
I hear what you're saying, Rich, but I'm against it for every reason that I was against MCAS being a graduation requirement.
And I have the same concern. If you had a kid who was like me, who was brilliant in mathematics but couldn't read, you're gonna deprive me of a diploma. Now, when I went to college, in my first year, basic English class, the professor handed me back my paper, and it was a sea of red. And at the end, he wrote, "You need to drop out right now or come see me." And I went to see him. And eventually, I got better at it. To this day, if I'm sitting down in a group and we're given an article to read, I'll be only a third of the way through when everybody else is done. But I understand what I'm reading. That was my handicap. I don't want to see kids, and you could have a kid who's brilliant in language arts, but struggles with math. And I don't want to see that child denied a diploma.
Well, the question is what kind of diploma is there? Separate kinds of diplomas. And also, I would hope that the kid like you would be able to get.
That is part of your motion.
I would think that.
I think in our education system here in the States, though, the separate diplomas really comes much more into play at the college level.
I'm talking about like
Not at the
certificate of
high school.
attendance, certificate of whatever, you attended, you did whatever. But on your case, I'm not talking about making it so hard that somebody with your motivation would fail, even come close to failing. So it takes you longer to read something. I'm not looking to fail you. I'm saying you at least would get through it, you would understand it. You knew enough math to succeed. We're not looking for that. We're looking for some kids that just totally turn out and they don't know the basics, and you can put a test in front of them, and it's a simple questionnaire, very easy, and they can't even answer it.
They really want to make it hard on you, don't they? All right, we've got like 12 things to discuss. We're
And I
on
know
the
he's got the
first
Yankees
one.
game at some point.
So first, I'm looking for a vote on the amendment. And keep in mind, if we end up approving the policy, but not your amendment, I would encourage you to make the motion for the an amendment again when I go to read that policy name at the full school committee meeting. Okay? And then you'll be able to engage the whole committee in the discussion. But right now, we're voting on just whether we would like to amend this in the way that Rich indicated.
So I'm happy, this is sit there and say, okay, I approve this as it's written to smooth things out, and say that we can bring up a discussion, say, should we add to this a minimum competency test that's found someplace, that teachers don't have to sit there and figure it out themselves, that's, from the principal of the high school saying, this is what we believe, that you should at least have basic knowledge of when you get out of your diploma. So I'm happy to say that, and then bring up for discussion, should we have a basic knowledge, and show that the test is going to be pretty darn easy. I'm not looking to sit there and trick people and all that, but if you're going to school here, I would think almost everybody should be able to pass it. I'm not looking for, the most complicated type of high school calculus to say, math.
All right, votes to make an amendment. Tim?
No.
Rich?
Okay, so what I said I was going to pass this, but then amend later on.
We have to vote on your amendment first, and then one of you can make a motion to accept the policy.
Okay.
And
So
then we
this
bring
is
it to the
just,
whole school committee, you can make your motion
You can
there,
make it.
and everybody can get involved in the conversation.
So like, I vote no.
I'll say yes, because
You would vote yes, because you made the amendment, right? Okay, so it doesn't pass here, but now I'm gonna be looking for someone to make a motion and second for the policy. But at the school committee meeting, when I go to read this policy, first reading for, okay, it's so long, it's hard to get to.
I'm not going to be here the next
IKFE.
I will be here this Thursday, but not the one after.
Well, there's 3 readings, so you've got 3 school committee meetings where you can make a motion to bring it up.
Okay.
Okay, for discussion, okay? So it's 3 meetings in a row, it'll be read, okay?
Fair enough.
All right, so is there anyone interested in making a motion to accept the policy?
I'll say accept
And
policy.
second,
Okay, and second, all right, so is there any further discussion on this one? Okay, votes to approve or not approve, Tim?
yes.
Yes.
Me, yes. Okay,
I do have one other question.
yes.
Trigonometry, is that part of the integrated? Because I didn't see trigonometry mentioned in there at all.
So trigonometry, this is where you get back into that delineation between competency and graduation requirements.
Okay.
So the competency is based on the first 2 years of high school,
Yeah, yeah.
which is more the algebra, geometry, and a
Right,
little
right.
bit of the algebra too. Trigonometry typically comes junior year and senior year, depending on where the kids are. So we do offer trigonometry. We offer it 2 ways. As part of a really intense pre-calculus, it's a trigonometry and pre-calc together, and then we have a separate trig class all by itself.
Okay, I just didn't see it there as well,
Yeah.
that you were covering our bases.
All right, speaking of graduation requirements, up for discussion now is policy IKF, graduation requirements, which we just recently modified to add tons of competency determinations and very similar table-like forms and all these definitions that now would be redundant. And so when you look at the policy, you'll see they're just all crossed out of the policy, several pages worth, because there will be in policy IKFE, assuming it passes. So, I don't know, did anyone have concerns about the deletions from this? Neither policy includes any type of standardized test, Rich. So once again, I think it would be, it's up to you whether you want to bring up your interest in there being standardized tests. It's whether you think it should be for the definition of competency, which would be an amendment to IKFE, or whether you think it should be for a graduation requirement. You would want to then propose to amend IKF, okay? So that's up to you.
Okay, yes.
If there's no further discussion on that policy, do I have anyone willing to make a motion to accept?
So move.
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, gifts and solicitations. I mean, the state being against gambling, the state is full of casinos, and we can't have a 50-50 raffle
And the state runs
to
a
raise
lottery.
money for soccer balls?
The state runs a
Well,
lottery.
no, that's different. It says the school can't be the sponsoring organization.
Yeah, I know that. They're just making it much more difficult.
No, but to your point, like at the band concert, if the music boosters wanted to have a 50-50 raffle, then that wouldn't impact this policy, because that's being run by the music boosters. If you go to the soccer game and there's a 50-50, that's being run by the athletic boosters. That's not the school. It's that I couldn't send home to families, hey, we're doing a calendar raffle where the prize is, you buy tickets and you win cash each day.
So when we come in and there's like a bunch of baskets to put raffle tickets in
Music
at a
boosters.
music concert, as long as it's the Minichog Music Association
Correct.
doing it, it's totally cool. Okay. So, all right, so this starts out with gifts. So policy GBEBC. That's it. Okay.
These
so
don't mean anything, do they? It's like,
his or her is changed to their in the policy because there could be a pronoun other than his or her, right? And then there is all inclusive. Those are the only changes to, and then the raffles and games of chance, so the school. So currently, right now, is the school involved in any of this kind of stuff?
Well,
The
not
school-
not the school, but
Right, the
organization
boosters, the
itself,
Minichog
yes.
Musical Association,
Yeah.
but, so with these, there's a few policies that are in a row now where the state's saying you can't do gambling. We are these policies as they're written, if we choose to accept them, we are currently in compliance with them. We are not doing anything that these policies would exclude. Okay, I think that makes me more comfortable. That was my biggest concern. I'm like, okay, what's gonna change, what impacts to the students there might be if we don't raise money and stuff, but, So I don't know, what do you guys think of the modifications to G, B, E, B, Z?
I'll vote to approve it.
Does that prevent teachers from participating in the sale of raffle tickets?
They can't sell them, they can't sell them,
Can't sell.
they can't, as I understand it, they can't sell them, they can't ask people to buy them. However, personally, as an attendant of a concert, they could buy a ticket, right, and put it in the
It
basket.
says explicitly, unless doing so is a member of a sponsoring organization.
Yeah.
So if you had a teacher who was also a member of the athletic boosters, they could do so in their athletic booster role at the stands, but they couldn't sell it from their classroom.
Right, I mean, I think it's logical, it puts pressure on people to buy it that don't really want to gamble. The teachers in the classroom saying, buy these tickets, your grade's not gonna be so good if people don't buy tickets. I think it's good to have something like this.
Here's another way to define competency.
That's right.
I mean, can they do the numbers on the odds for the,
Yes.
who's gonna win all the sports games
Guarantee
and
they'll do
stuff?
that.
All right, so I think you were making a motion to approve,
Yeah.
second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, we got past the long letter one, okay. The next, so this, the changes to JJE, student fundraising activities, are very similar to the last one, where there's just the statement added. Students and student groups are barred by state law and regulation from organizing raffles and games or chants and stuff like that. So this means that the NHS students can't run a raffle. Right?
Mhm.
Correct, because that's a student organization, or
Right.
student council can't run a raffle.
Correct.
It has to be a parent organization.
Correct.
Okay, so, and this is only being changed because we're required to make this change because of changes to Massachusetts state law.
Correct.
Isn't there a minimum age for buying lottery tickets or no?
Yes.
18.
Yes. And you can buy them on your phone now, did you?
Never bought one.
The bottom line is for cashing in.
I mean, the state of
They sell them to
Massachusetts
anybody.
keeps making it easier for people to gamble, yet we don't want to let any of that proceeds help the school, so. All right, anybody in favor of accepting the change to JJE?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
So I always thought for fundraising, like when they need money for the tea, you have all those, turnstiles going in. So you make a thing that, normally you put your ticket in, and every so often, you get like, if you pick this one and you pay a little extra, you get like 100 to 1 payoff, So you can make gambling every time you enter the teas, you can win or not.
Can't win unless you play.
Make lots of money. Fund the tea.
The only problem is the T gets to currently keep all the money, instead of periodically giving some away. But I guess if you say you can double your fares, if you give 10% of that back, then they'd be all in favor of that,
I'll pay
right?
twice the fare for a chance of a ticket at a winning number walking through the turnstile.
So, and a lot is good, a lot of good things are done with proceeds that are raised from state lotteries and raffles, and in all fairness, I think should be.
I think for people that, in my opinion on it, is that people that don't want to pay taxes don't mind paying taxes if they get the chance of winning something. So like your whole idea of filling in your taxes, you should make it fun, make it a gamble, you optionally pay more and have a chance to win, the state could really increase their revenue.
Does that prohibit a teacher from creating a Super Bowl by a square thing?
Yeah, that would be frowned upon.
Mhm.
It's
It
dumb,
should
but
be a
it's.
violation of
Well, but
policy.
if,
Yeah,
wait a
violation
second,
of policy.
if it's not a fundraiser, and they're purely gambling on a personal level,
Well, they need to
and they're
think
not
of it.
including students, and they're not doing it during work time,
You're saying do it.
He's just talking about a neighbor then.
yeah.
You just took away all the freakers. But could a teacher in a class say, hey, we got the Super Bowl coming up. Let's guess some scores. Let's guess who fumbles the first, who, yeah, you could have a class, this, you know, thing like that. You just can't say, everybody give me $1.
Yes.
And then like that you couldn't do.
I guess that's understandable. So, all right, our next policy on the agenda, KBE, relationships with parent booster organizations. Looks like a bit of this one was deleted and then another sentence added to once again hammer home the point that, you know, the booster organizations and stuff need to follow the laws and stuff. And there are references to Massachusetts state laws, etc., and other policies. I don't know what you guys think about this one. I think it's, I didn't have any more issue with this one than I did with the others.
So moved.
All right. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, exciting.
We're on a tight ship here.
I'm trying to get you guys home on time, right? So, all right. ECAB, access to buildings and grounds. This is a new policy for our district that had a word in it that I now need to add to my vocabulary. Promulgated? I don't know, I've never heard it said. How do you pronounce it?
Promulgated.
Promulgated.
Spread out.
No, to enact by edict or decree by our king.
No kings.
No kings, right. All right, so, so it's a new policy. So, my only question about this, like, I know outside organizations sometimes pay money to rent the auditorium, fields and stuff. Does this impact any current practices that are going on with that?
No, basically it just says, it's a policy that says we're going to do what we've already been doing. Steve, do you see something else?
No, I was gonna say, it goes back to the public is welcome to use the schools under the procedures that you created.
Right.
That would be a procedure that's created. I have a dance studio, I'm gonna rent the auditorium for my spring dance studio. I go to the superintendent's office, I fill out the appropriate paperwork and look at the schedule of fees and then make a decision whether or not I'm gonna move forward with that. Those procedures already exist.
Okay. So we're already doing this, and this policy supports our current good practice.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else have any
So
concerns?
moved.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right. Next policy, EFBA, school food and nutrition meal modifications.
And this one is coming up because if we're scheduled to have a audit of our school lunch program, so if the shutdown does not last for the rest of the school year, then this will take place, and one of the things they'll look for us is to have this policy in place. This has come up in audits of other school lunch programs, so we're just trying to get ahead of that by adopting the policy now.
Okay. So the question I had with this policy, let's say a hypothetical. The family fills out a form and says, I'm sorry, my daughter is on a lobster-only protein diet.
Mm-hmm.
And this says that we will provide and comply and not charge any extra.
Well, it says on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
So I might say, can we talk to the physician and see if there's some other
Okay,
protein
so,
source?
so it's reasonable, and there's a mechanism in place where there would need to be not just a parent, but some other professional,
Right.
doctor, physician or something, saying why the kid has a
Does it say
certain
that?
diet. Okay.
Well, it just says on case-by-case basis, so under case-by-case basis, you can say, we need to do a little more understanding of this.
So then he's allowed to say, well, I need a note from a doctor saying why your kid needs to have a $25 lunch every day. Okay. I have no other issues with this policy other than the conflict question.
So moved.
I agree.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, okay. The ayes have it. All right. KBG, this would be a new policy for our thing. Parent Advisory Councils, PACs, same an acronym name as the big groups of different organizations that funnel tons of millions of dollars to the politicians to make things happen. Don't think I didn't notice that. And then the CPACs for the special education, and then the early, do we have these PACs in place at this point, in CPACs and so forth?
We have special education, we don't have an EL pack because we don't have enough multi-language learners in the district.
Okay. So this is another policy we don't have, but it's something that we're already doing. And this policy as written, would it change anything that we already do, Josh?
So the only thing that I noticed is we had this discussion last year around having the committee appoint a liaison who attends all of the CPAC meetings. And the will of the committee was to have that be on a rotating basis so that multiple members could attend. But the way I'm reading it is that it seems like we should look to appoint a liaison to the CPAC and other members could attend if they so desired.
Or do we want a liaison from the CPAC to periodically present at the school committee meeting?
So the way I read the policy is it should be a combination of both. So Karen Romano, for example,
I have not touched it.
comes frequently.
Huh?
Karen Romano, for example, comes frequently to our school committee meetings.
Okay. And she's on the,
She's part of our CPAC, yep.
okay. All right, so the way this policy is written then, you think both need to happen?
Mhm.
Okay, and have we had a school committee member participate in a CPAC?
Last year, yes, there were a few meetings where school committee members participated.
Okay.
It wasn't every meeting, but
Okay,
yes.
all right. Okay, and so then, but we don't currently have PACs.
We have a pack,
We have a PAC.
yes.
A CPAC.
Well, do we have the CPAC?
Because
Do we have a regular, well, I don't want to call it regular, but do we have a non-special education PAC?
No, this policy is specifically about the special education pack and the EL pack. Every district is required to have a special education pack, and if you have a sufficient number of English
Got it.
learners, then you have to have an EL pack as well.
Got it, it's not talking about PACs as a separate PAC, it's as in, that's the overriding group. Got it. Okay. All right, I have no other issues with this. So it seems that we have some, we're open to interpretation as following, so that's always a good thing to have some flexibility.
I approve. You made a motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, KBG approved. All right, so now this is the middle school career pathway exploration policy. This one is the one that does not have letters, right?
Correct.
But it would be a new policy for a district. This has something to do with the pathway, right?
It's related. In fact, I used this slide, which is in your packet, as part of explaining the pathway last year. This is coming up because there have been some changes to vocational education. One of the main concerns has been that enrollment practices by certain technical vocational schools have not been accessible to all. So typically, prior to this year, a lot of vocational and technical schools would enroll students on the basis of their middle school behavior, attendance, and grades, and that raised concerns for many groups. So this year, the law changed to say that students need to be admitted by lottery. They could be admitted by a weighted lottery that includes some considerations for behavior, attendance, and grades, but it can't be that process of identifying the students who are most successful in middle school as the ones you're going to put at the top of the list for enrollment in vocational school. And because of that, the students have to all complete their admission process or make known to the vocational school that they would like to be included in the lottery earlier on in the year, which then means that middle schools need to do a better job of advising middle school students about the change in the process, because anyone who doesn't submit an application by March 1st can't be considered for vocational, because that's when the lottery will run. I mean, they could, but they have to go to the bottom of the list, which means they'll never get in. This policy, and that's why this one came out, and they said you have to get it done by November 1st, which I did request an extension on, so hopefully we'll get that extension. That's why this policy came out. Now, I did intentionally weaken it a little bit, because in the model policy sent from the state, they said all students would begin MyCap starting in 6th grade, which I think is a stretch for our district. We began all students doing MyCap with 9th grade just this year, and we're rolling that out through the high school, so it'll be 4 more years till we get to full MyCap in the middle school. That is a different, more intensive kind of career counseling for students. I think it could be aspirational for us to get to MyCap starting in middle school, but I think we don't have the capacity to do that at this time, in my opinion. So what I substituted for that was implementing the Massachusetts Career Development Model, which also says that career exploration and preparation for life after school starts in 6th grade, but it doesn't involve the formal MyCap process. It says that 6th and 7th grade are about self-discovery, work with students to identify their interests, skills, talents, and passions, and then in 7th and 8th grade becomes a little bit more of a focused career awareness process involving students attending career days, having speakers from different fields come in, conducting career interest inventories, and starting to search out what careers exist. So in the version of the policy I drafted, we're following this instead of doing that kind of counseling with kids. I did meet with the counseling staff for both the high school and the middle school. They were supportive of that, thinking that MyCap is a great process, and it may be what we transition to in future years, but saying that we could stand up MyCap this year for all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders is just too much for us. So the main difference in this policy and the draft policy that the Department of Education created for us is that in our appendix, I don't talk about MyCap, I talk about the Massachusetts Career Development Model.
Do we have more applicants than spots? Is that why we need a lottery, or?
Well, there are, yes, for us, we do. The gap is small. We probably have, every year, maybe 4 or 5 kids who don't get a seat, and so the lottery will help. But there are some schools that are, taking thousands of applications for hundreds of seats. And so that's where the lottery really comes in.
Like Pathfinder.
I think Pathfinder, well, you probably read they're expanding, so they have more applicants than they can take right now. But there are a number of schools in the middle and eastern part of the state where, it's very difficult to get in because they're overwhelmed with applications.
If you ever get that, we do have a lottery thing, which we use charter schools, parents apply online, with all kinds of factors, then the computer decides who gets in.
Pardon?
So then the computer decides who gets in based on, all kinds of criteria and factors, but it's not a human being.
Well,
Just let you know.
what we discussed with the LVPEC was just doing it as a straight lottery. Instead of trying to figure out the weighting, because there are also laws about the weighting. You couldn't let weights count for too much. And so we said, let's just do lottery. And part of that is philosophical, because some of the kids who may not be doing so well in middle school may not be doing so well in middle school because they need a vocational education, and when they're put in a different environment, they have a transformation. And so holding them out of that based on what they did in middle school might not be the best thing for them either. So for us in the LVPEC, we've been talking about You know, if the computer does anything, it's only gonna be picking numbers.
Yeah.
So so they're gonna do a straight lottery, is that across the 5 towns?
So what we've talked about doing
Or like,
is,
are there a certain number of seats that are guaranteed in each school district?
what we've talked about doing it is on a, we haven't actually written up the policy yet, but it would be on a rolling average based on the number of applicants. So if you have a district that, you know, only has 10 applicants, we don't want to reserve, you know, 20 seats for you, but we want to weight it more towards the schools that have more applicants. So they have a better chance of getting through the lottery.
Okay, I just don't want, like, if there's a ton of applicants from Springfield, then, you know, Minichog students not being able to get in.
Well, Springfield has their own vocational school.
Oh, right, they're not part of the collaborative. Well, let's say there's a ton of applications from, you know, Agawam or West Springfield. I don't want the odds of our students to be never in their favor.
Right. Neither do I.
Okay, all right.
And that's something that, you know, the representative to the LVPEC will have to vote on at a certain point, so maybe when we discuss this, bringing that up so they know that that is a concern of some school committee members.
Okay. Lisa will be all over this. Okay, cool. All right, anyone in favor of accepting this policy? Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any second? Second, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And can I just point out on that one, since it doesn't have letters, I think what we would probably do is put it in the handbook, so that if it passes, we'd ask you to revoke the handbook with this as an addition to it.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. All right, EFE, this would be a new policy for us. Civil rights complaint policy for child nutrition programs. So my only question about this and the next one, why is like civil right complaints only being directed towards the nutrition programs? Like, isn't there already a policy for reporting a civil rights violation in math class or?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a number of policies that involve civil rights. However, in the USDA audit process, they cite districts unless they have a specific policy that involves students who may have had their civil rights violated through the school lunch program. So these policies are there for school lunch program specific civil rights violations so that we can satisfy the requirements of the audit.
Okay. And as I read through this, it just kind of describes that there is a process for reporting, there's an opportunity to report it anonymously if they want to, but that there's no actual regulations here as to what constitutes a civil rights violation. I guess it's defined by the beholder.
Well, it's defined by the requirements in Food Nutrition's Program Instruction 113-1 and 216 MOU. So I'm not 100% familiar with those documents, but those are the underlying documents that would be used to evaluate any civil rights claims based on this policy.
Okay.
This is not for employees of the lunch program, right? It's for kids.
Well, I mean, you could have an employee, like, we're allowed to buy lunches from the school lunch program. If Julie said, you know, I'm not serving men anymore, then, you know, that would be a civil rights complaint.
This hasn't happened before, has it?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh boy, I think we're talking about that, maybe it was their time on it.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve EFE, and maybe we can group it together with EFR, because it's basically the same discussion,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right. Oh, God, we're 2 minutes late. Okay. I tried.
Oh, you did very well.
All right.
It's over already?
All
We got
right.
pages left.
So, anybody have anything that they want put on a future agenda for the policy subcommittee? Or we'll probably have another meeting, and do we need to set another meeting date?
I am not aware of any meeting, policies we need to adjust.
Okay,
right now.
so we're currently caught up, okay, so.
Just physical restraint before the end of the year.
Okay, so we'll need at least one more.
Yeah.
Is it, yeah, by
I'm
the end
sure
of the
we'll have
calendar
more
year?
than one.
No, by the end of the school year.
Okay.
Because they go into effect in August of '26.
I'm sure MASC or some other agency will give us some language for that.
Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:40 and 35 seconds. All right, great work, guys.
Yeah, nice.